Yeah, this is David Schmidt, who's going to demonstrate the Megaflash, right? Yep. So
All right. Hey, everybody. Hey. My name's David Schmidt. I do ADT Pro. I do retrofloppy.com. I got, well, thanks to Ken, I got a hold of one of these devices, a Megaflash for the Apple IIc. Now, depending on where you go looking for this thing, some of the earlier iterations worked also on an 2C Plus. They're working on it, on changes that will make it more compatible with all the 2C type machines. Ah, very good. Crunch, crunch. There we go. So this thing is kind of difficult to categorize. I'm just going to have this run into the background. I need to show you about 6 things at once, all at the same time. So we're going to have to iterate on a couple of things till I can finally layer all of what this thing is in. So what I would like to do is I would like to show you the device itself, but it needs to kind of sit still in this 2C because I've got this HDMI dongle hanging out the back, and that's going to cause problems if I go, hey, look at this thing. So just a minute, we'll show you that at the end, and discuss some information about the hardware aspects of this thing. What is it? Well, you take this device. It's a small little daughter board, and you yoink out your 6502. Plug it into that daughter board, yoink out your ROM, plug in a ROM that they supply or you could burn, right? It's fairly open source what this device and code is. But you basically replace the brains, or you transplant the brains of your Apple IIc and its ROM so that you gain a bunch of new functions. So as you might imagine, as happens these days, is we can pack a computer who knows how many times more powerful than this thing onto a chip and transplant it into where its old chip went. This is nothing new. So that this is in that vein of things. But what this particular peripheral does for the Apple IIc is it gives it storage. And the storage that it gives you is, I've got notes here just to make sure I don't forget anything. You've got 4 32 megabyte ProDOS partitions. So you remember 32 meg is the biggest ProDOS partition you could have. So one thing you want to remember, again, layering many things at once, remember how fast this is going. It'll come up later. 4 32 megabyte partitions. There's a RAM disk of 400K, 800 blocks, 400K that you've got, just a RAM disk you can have for any of the ProDOS or Apple II desktop, as you'll see. And then there is also a little tiny 200K ROM disk, and they couch it in terms of if all else fails, if you write over garbage on your partitions and blow the doors off of everything, there's something you can't modify, and it's a fail-safe, kind of like a boot partition on a PC these days, or maybe 10 years ago, that you can always boot into the recovery partition. That's what that is. Then it also has some Wi-Fi capabilities. So it's got a built-in radio so it can talk Wi-Fi. And what it will do today is TFTP transfers, which is trivial FTP. There's no security or anything. You set up a TFTP server, and this is the client, and you can zap these entire partitions back and forth. Because, right, remember, this is a 2C. This daughter board lives inside, normally, a closed case. You're looking at a naked 2C here, but normally, right, the case is closed. There's no place to fit anything besides your normal floppy disks or whatever. So moving data in and out of this thing becomes the task of the over the air of the Wi-Fi. So that TFTP is a very simple, very quick way to move data in and out of this thing. There's another way of doing it, which is, hold on for the journey here a little bit. You can stick a USB, open this darn thing up, stick a USB cable into the side of this daughter board, and then you don't even need the 2C anymore. As a matter of fact, I think you could probably unplug it and just use it on the side. You have the ability to do X modem transfers in and out of this thing by hooking up to your USB cable, hooking up a terminal program. So I tried this. Sure enough, I can send entire disk images back and forth to this thing through X modem. And it was like going back to, I don't know, when was that? 1989 or something. Not even Z modem, X modem. You needed to know the name of the file. It was a wild ride. So that's a possibility. I'm not saying this is practical and how you would normally want to do this, but they stuck it in there. It's kind of cool. And then of course, once you've got this thing installed, it becomes a peripheral in the normal ProDOS sense. So ADT Pro becomes a means of sending data in and out of this thing, reading and writing the partitions that you've created or they've created or whatever. Much slower because it's going over serial, plain old RS-232 serial, but it's possible. So anyway, the idea is they've got a whole bunch of storage that are ProDOS volumes, and you can move them in and out in the normal way, the way we used to have to do it in the Stone Age with ADT Pro, or you can do this TFTP thing, or you can do the USB thing. All those become possible. And as I said, it hooks up to your Wi-Fi. So earlier today, I just found out what the name and password was. You stick it in here, and of course it's modern security, so they aren't going to tell you what it is hooked up as. But you can just imagine that I found out what the Wi-Fi was here, went and tested it, and it comes back and says, hey, everything's cool. It's able to see the network back and forth. Now, I hadn't tested this with my M4 Mac, so I couldn't get on this network and test TFTP back and forth between my M4 Mac and this, but at home it worked. So there's clearly some firewall thing that I'm not solving yet, but it's not going to be a problem normally. So we've got our normal TCP/IP settings that it generates when it goes out to the local network and says, who can I be? And DNS comes along and says, you can be this. All right, and then once you've got that set up and you've got a TFTP server sitting on a machine someplace else, that's where you go. All right, let's see how far we can go without actually being connected. Yeah, so you basically go into the TFTP settings or transfer settings and say which volume do you want to move in or out, and so you can see here are those or toroid mic, isn't it? There's 4 ProDOS, those 4 32 meg set partitions that you can move in and out, and of course the RAM disk, and there's no option to move the ROM disk in or out. So this is only what you've got read-write access to. So you can use TFTP to move those back and forth. Let's see, and then of course there's some other utility things. For example, you can format any of those volumes, copy those back and forth. So when this thing was shipped, or when you go and buy one, by the way, they're $99, $100 at JCM-1.com, right? The JCM fella that's selling these. It will come to you with A2 Desktop as an installed thing. It will come with a version of Total Replay. I've overlaid the most recent Total Replay on top of this, but they have a build of it that they stick on here, and then a couple of blank volumes for you that it's up to you to do with what you choose. So normally when you buy this thing, normally when you buy this thing, all these checkboxes would be checked. And it was surprising to me. I plugged this thing in, turned on my Apple IIc, and it did this. Let's see here. Okay, so turn it on, and it starts this Apple II desktop thing, right? So I turned it on. There was no floppy in the drive or anything, and all of a sudden my IIc has a different personality. Now it's running. Ooh, this looks wild. Now this is running A2 Desktop, which you might remember. Oh, Ken, help me out. What's the fellow's name? Joshua Bell has been maintaining this, taking it from Apple and started maintaining it for his own nefarious purposes. So he's got kind of an ecosystem now that's running this. But yeah, so it just starts up running this this thing. And if you've ever used a Mac, it's like, oh, that's where they got the Mac. I don't know which came first, but it's really quite similar. And for whatever reason, I'm noticing that so this is running Total Replay. What I did was I brought up Apple II Desktop. I moved over to the Total Replay partition and said, boot that sucker. Don't even boot, run it. And it did. The graphics are not quite right. We're not seeing the normal screen, but I can type, some various things. And okay, well, didn't work that way, but you know how it will work is if we bring this up and say, let's see here, control panel. What do I want to do? Megaflash. Yeah, that's going to boot on disk. Okay. Let me see. No, I wanted to do the ROM disk. Hang on just a second. Boot ROM disk, which should be 3. Yeah. Okay. So what I did here is I'm rebooting it and saying, oh, by the way, what I want to do is I want to get into the fail-safe mode. I want to boot the recovery partition. So what they've done is they've loaded it up with a bunch of software that can do various things. So, Block Warden, Cat Doctor, y'all probably have seen many of these things, tools to fix file systems and stuff. And we can zoom all the way down to a favorite of mine and run INIT Pro so that we can look at what are the volumes that are available in the system. So now we're looking at not only the things that are on the Megaflash, but also the other peripherals that are here, like the teeny tiny RAM disk. Here's that fail-safe ROM disk we were talking about. The 4 volumes that they give you, plus their bigger RAM disk and the disk that's in the floppy drive. So INIT Pro can see all of this, the entirety of the system, whereas if you're just speaking to the Megaflash, it only knows about the storage it knows about. So there's a wider ecosystem that this plays in. It knows about itself, but other tools that are, for example, on this ROM disk are able to access everything. All right, let's see. Transfer. Oh, and so another aspect of the time, another aspect of the Wi-Fi is time. And let me see here. So yeah, here it is, the network time sync. So it uses NNTP, it talks NNTP and goes out and finds out what time it is, and it keeps track of those dates and times with the ProDOS clock driver. So if I'm, for example, let's boot the regular old floppy disk. And so I'm in ProDOS, and it knows what the time and date is. So when I'm creating files, copying files, whatever, it'll put today's date in there, and it keeps it up to date, having to do with time zones and everything, because NNTP knows that stuff. So if I can type, oh boy, slow and steady wins the race. So today I wrote this Spyro program. Here it is, 19th of June. That's what it is, and that's what you were seeing before. And so let's talk about another one of the things that they do is, remember, it's got a whole nother computer in here, which can watch and it's sitting between the 6502 and the rest of the system. So it's watching the address bus and what's going on, and it's able to do some interesting little speed ups in AppleSoft, specifically Apple interpreted AppleSoft. So you can see I genned up some garbage trig stuff that paints a picture. Now, if one of the things we can do is turn on that speed up. I don't want to boot Megaflash. If I boot Megaflash, it's going to go back into Apple II Desktop, and we don't really need that. I thought that was a strange decision to make, to say, yeah, once you buy this thing, now you're booting Apple II Desktop. Like, well, that's not what I was doing before. I don't want you to do that now. So I thought that was weird. Okay, we're going to save. And what I just did is I enabled the AppleSoft speed up, and it's most visible with trigonometry functions. Any math functions are fast, but trig does a lot of math in one package. So that was a way to test that. is just have a whole bunch of math happen in a visual way. What I did for myself was much more boring. I just used a stopwatch and had a loop that was doing nothing. But now you can see visually, it's drawing much faster. They say, I think 2 to 7 times, but lies, damn lies, and statistics. Whenever we're doing benchmarking, it depends very much on what your software is doing. So I was doing a lot of trig. Trig does a whole bunch of math within one keyword within basics, so you got a lot of speed up. So that was pretty cool. Any speed up you get depends on AppleSoft, depends on what AppleSoft is doing, and if you're heading off into machine language, you don't get any speed ups at all. So okay, so that's the way this thing looks kind of on the screen. So let's get naked and talk a little bit about the hardware itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this guy off, and we're going to yoink a couple of things. Now, I don't have anything interesting to display, so there you go. That's what's showing on the iPad down there. So I'm going to unplug the power from this thing. Never had trouble unplugging the power. That's interesting. All right, so we have our stock. This is a stock 2C, and it's the first one. So this is ROM 255, they call it. It's the oldest one. It's got the most problems. So if I lift up the keyboard, all right, you can see a little bit of red in there. That little bit of red is the daughter board. And on there, watch, on here, so this is the 6502, and then there's a ROM chip that has got the white tag on it. That's what we have to replace. So there's a little bit of unscrewing and unplugging chips to be done when you buy one of these things. And I will say, so let's unplug it, since this is the last time it's going to need to work before I get at my actual tools. Okay. So there it is. It's off, right? Just making sure. So a couple of things to notice about this, right? This normally comes up empty when you buy it. You have to unplug your 6502 and plug it into this thing carefully, making sure not to bend the pins, making sure you keep track of where pin 1 is, always important. Then you also have that it is supplied with this device another what are these called? A socket but not machine pinned. It's the flat blade sockets. It's kind of known in the industry. There's cheap ones and there's good ones. Machine pins are good and expensive. The flat blade ones are cheap and flimsy. This came to me with the flat, cheap, flimsy one, and I had personally 2 problems with implementing this, in that I needed to plug it and unplug it a couple of times because I had some trouble getting it to work, and there was reasons for that, sometimes having to do with the socket. So what I did instead is I went to my local Radio Shack, which is a fellow that lives down the street that has a basement full of parts that his wife is happy to give me parts for. My wife is not happy that I come home with more than I left with. And got a couple of machine pin sockets from him and used that instead. That solved a couple of problems. One was I had broken a couple of the pins off the cheap ones just by unplugging and plugging it a couple of times, trying to solve a couple of problems I had. I created a couple more for myself. Anyway, plug this new machine pin socket in, and I bought a couple on eBay just to replace them, to foil the fellow's wife. Aha, you get more. And they were kind of expensive. I don't know, like $10 or something, 10, 13 bucks. But the problem that it solved for me was, when you sit this thing down into the machine and it has the cheap flimsy sockets, it would rock and it would move and it would stop booting. It would kind of boot to nothing, which was terrible. And especially if you were going to close this thing up and screw it back together and it's become loose and it won't boot anymore, now I've got to unscrew the whole thing again. And so that's solved by the machine pins being a little bigger and thicker, and it sticks in there much harder. and I was much happier to finally connect it all back together again. So if I were to suggest to anybody that wants to buy one of these things, make sure you either talk to JCM and say, dude, I'll pay $10, whatever. Give me a machine pin socket because those blade ones suck. And then, of course, over here is where the, let's see, what is this? The micro USB that you could plug a cable into to do that X modem transfer. And what you're doing is you're doing the X modem transfer to the computer here, not to the Apple IIc. You're doing it to this computer. And I'm going to point, let's see here, these four guys, I think, are the memory that becomes those ProDOS volumes. But that's about it. That's what this thing is. It's a carrier that hosts your 6502. It's memory that retains your ProDOS volumes. It retains what the name of the SSID of your Wi-Fi is, and then there's a computer here to help be that wedge between the actual machine, the address bus, the old CPU, and enhances it in some interesting ways. So I think that's probably about all I've got to say. JCM-1, I'm not getting paid for this or anything. JCM-1.com. They sell these for $99.99. Oh, okay. So one more story about this particular hardware. Maybe you have a 255 ROM. Maybe you have something newer. If you've got something newer, that's great, and you will solve a couple of problems that I had. One is, let's see, there's a couple of solder pads here that you have to, traces that you have to cut and solder in order to make it such that a 32K ROM will work as opposed to the way this thing ships, which is capable of a 16K ROM. So unbeknownst to me, this is why I'm yoinking the thing out and putting it back. It's like, where's the problem? It wouldn't boot with the ROM that they gave me, and and I even took it out and put it on my my ROM reader burner, and I compared the two chips and like, dude, these are different. Why is that? I'm like, oh, you know what? You have to do this thing. That wasn't on the website or any of the instructions. Well, it's on the website now. You're welcome. So that's a thing you have to do. Also, this version, I've got it over on my table, but there's this giant ladder-looking support that makes the keyboard not flex. It makes the keyboard stiff. Well, there's no room for that plus this. So they do also sell another much skinnier support that's been 3D printed, I suppose, that keeps this from flexing. So mine lacks it altogether, and it's really quite mushy. But you need that because it interferes mechanically with the room that this thing takes up, kind of horizontally in there. So that's it. That's all I have to say about that. And I would welcome any questions if you've got any questions about this crazy thing. The question is when did this come into existence? How long has it been around? So it was originated by a guy named Thomas Thomas Fock, and another fellow, Elmars Ostis, probably I've mispronounced both of their names. It's been a couple of years anyway. If you go to GitHub, somebody can correct me quickly. If you go to Thomas Fock's original, which Elmars forked from, that's kind of the original, and it's at least a couple of years old. And there's a little different design. This Elmars fellow enhanced it some. Interestingly, he has opened up. He did make a couple of design changes that is going to allow him to do Ethernet support. It's going to be able to pretend to be an Ethernet, which will now bring that Wi-Fi capability all the way up the stack to applications that can use it, not just this computer here, but this computer here. So that'll be a very interesting change that doesn't exist yet. Well, he's building it and testing it, but he has that intention. Yeah, go ahead. Well, I've got a follow-up. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I have for my TUI and TUI, I've got CFS 3000. I've never used floppy disk. I haven't had any. I've got nothing on my TUI yet, but I've been thinking about it. As far as it sounds like this Ethernet that'll make it beyond as far as functionality, and it's going to be far as just handling volume, how does this compare to the floppy? Is it just from that side of the first,
Yeah. I actually wanted to test it alongside it, but my floppy emu's screen has died. Sadly, a lot of them do that. So how does it compare? What I really like about this device is that it's you don't see it. It doesn't hang out the back. There's nothing I need to plug. Well, I do need to plug it in, right? There's nothing I need to plug in outside, and it's all sort of self-contained. So I really, really like that about this particular device. How does it compare? You still have to do transfers somehow with floppy emu, and that might be the way you do it with a floppy emu is it's got a little card that you unplug and plug into some other computer and copy back and forth, and so you, dear reader, become the network. This has the network built in, so there's still work that you've got to do to do that transfer of images. It might be some bit of physical sneaker net, it might be TFTP, but that's how they compare. Is you'll always be doing transfer one way or another, and you just kind of decide which is interesting to you.
and this amount of volume, but I know like with the CFFA, there's volume, but then there's also the concept of just give 5.25 just give it directly.
Yep.
This doesn't have that.
Okay, so now we're going to shift gears and talk about disk images themselves, like .po or .dsk sorts of things, and a device. So it's being brought up that a device like the CFFA 3000 and I think the floppy emu, right? It will absolutely take those disk images and serve them up, and this does not do that. There are, as you saw, there's, for example, the RAM disk could behave kind of like that, sort of, but it's not the same thing. It isn't going to serve disk images, little floppy disk images. So that's a really good point, Blake, is that it isn't a disk image server of the floppy disk kind. So this really is more along the lines of being able to serve, for example, Total Replay. It's the perfect vehicle for that. You can have it boot immediately into Total Replay, and what it's doing is serving all of those games. So that's
so it is serving a 32 meg disk image.
well, 4 of them, but yeah. You're exactly right.
That's
It's
form of disk image is what this thing accepts.
Yeah.
Whereas the 800K, the 140K, it doesn't accept server.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The disk image is those 4 32 meg PO files. Yeah, it doesn't do the little ones. That's a great way of putting it. Ken, you had your hand up.
You said this came out a couple of years ago, but I think the version Joe is selling just came out in February.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So so we were talking about the etymology of the entire system, and that goes back a ways. But yeah, this particular device that Elmar's is designed, and it's got his name on the back. So I'm assuming he's the one that soldered it together. I don't know if JCM does or not. I don't actually know who does the manufacturing of them. But yeah, between the two of them, it's February when this started life. This particular this iteration of that device. Yeah, thank you, Ken. All right, go ahead. It's got some letters and numbers that are really, really small. This is it looks a lot like the what the heck are those things called? Yeah, I think Pico 2 is what I remember. But yeah, there's no way, even with I need a microscope. But yeah, I think it's Pico 2. And I'm happy to leave it out before I jam this thing back in here. You're welcome to squint harder than I can. All right, anything else? Awesome questions, folks. Does it work in the 2C plus? This one does not. There's some work afoot to make sure to kind of re-engineer that back in. The original one by Mr. Thomas Falk, it even says on his repo for the 2C and 2C plus. This one will not work in the 2C plus. Yeah, go ahead.
David, any information on what other 2C enhancements can coexist?
Oh, what other 2C enhancements can coexist with this? So obviously nothing else that plugs into the CPU board because they exist, right? There's memory expanders, there's there's Z80s and stuff. I mean, it might get a little tall. I'm not exactly sure. Anything that hangs out the back, certainly. Any of those smart port devices will work. Even with my dead screen on my floppy emu, I did get it to do some things, so I know that it works. They talk about that in the GitHub repo about, yeah, it's basically compatible with anything. Interestingly, they seem to like ADT Pro also because they did a bug fix on the the virtual serial drive. It was enumerating itself incorrectly, and it messed up what they were doing. So they fixed it. Thanks. And I've then taken that fix and put it back into the ADT Pro repo. But yeah, it's very compatible with lots of stuff. And if it's not compatible, they seem to fix it. So good on them. That's a good question. All right. Anything else? I'll stand up here and talk all day until I get the hook from this fellow. Thanks, guys.